Righty. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to AuthorStory. I'm Alexander Lim, your host, and for this episode, I'm interviewing Randy Long, author of the book The Braveheart Exit: 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. And for those of you following along who are interested, please feel free to go over now to the Amazon link in the description below the video and check out or get a copy of Randy's book. So, Randy, welcome to AuthorStory. It's fantastic having you here as our guest.
Thanks for having me, Alex. I'm looking forward to the time together.
Cool, fantastic. So, Randy, first off, please introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your book. What's your background?
Okay. Well, I'm a certified financial planner.
Okay.
I'm a lawyer, so
Okay.
I've practiced also business law and estate planning for more than 25 years, and then I'm obviously too a certified exit planner. Which is really it's an add-on credential that if you're a CPA or a CFP or an attorney, you can add that, and that credential is one where we are trained to help business owners plan for a successful exit from their business. So that's what that's all about.
Okay. And so how long have you been in the business? How long have you been in the industry?
Well, I've been in the industry. I started my career in the financial side of things, working in the financial planning world. Realized I didn't have quite as much education as I thought I needed, or was as smart as I thought I was. And so I went to law school and learned, about estate planning and business organizations, because my whole goal was to serve family business owners because they've always kind of been my heroes, truthfully.
Okay.
So and then I've worked my career has been working with family business owners with the background of my financial planning and my law. And then I added this credential, the exit planning, which is a fairly new credential, maybe 6 years ago or so. It came into being, and I added it about 4 or 5 years ago, because it's right up the alley of what we do.
All right. Cool. Fantastic. So next, the book, Randy. What is the book is all about?
Yeah. Well, our business mission, if you would, my company mission, is to help business owners prepare for a successful exit from their business, to strengthen the family along the way, and to live their legacy. That's our mission as a company. And so the Braveheart Exit is a book that was written out of that mission. And it does just that. It's intended to help business owners understand what they're going to be dealing with as they try to exit their business. We want them to be able to do it well. Every business owner is going to exit one day. The question is whether they're going to do it well or not. And the number one thing that helps business owners determine to be successful or not is whether or not they have prepared, they've planned. So the book is written as a roadmap, if you will, to help them understand the opportunity for planning, helping them, and educates them towards it, because there's a tsunami coming of exits of business owners here in the next 5 years. About 50% of business owners will exit. Over 10 years, it's about 70%. So it's like, we're in that baby boomer generation here that's all getting out in the next years. And so dealing with that is going to be a huge number of them are leaving, and there frankly aren't that many people qualified to help them. And that's the reason why I wrote the book. I always said I wasn't going to write a book unless I had something different to say.
Okay.
So, so we know that we do exit planning work different than it's traditionally taught. We incorporate, of course, the things that are traditionally taught, but we add our own spin to the family piece of it, because if you do the business side well and you screw your family up, you haven't really won, you've lost.
Yeah, true. So was there any particular incident that made you think, I should put this all down? I mean, let's face it, given what you're doing right now, you don't have to write a book.
No, that's true. I don't have to write a book. But I did. Both my mother and my brother, my older brother, and my wife, frankly, and probably my wife more than anybody else, has pushed me to write a book about my own intellectual capital, if you will, and my experiences over the last 30 years and dealing with so many family business owners.
Right.
And and being able to leverage the information so that the public can benefit from it, I suppose. Because as I mentioned, there's so many business owners that are going to come out, and most business owners get professionals that treat their transition out as though it's a transaction.
Mm-hmm.
We treat an exit as a transformation, not a transaction. And if you wait until, the year before or 2 years before to decide that you want to sell your business or start to work on transitioning it, you're going to leave some significant opportunities on the table, probably a lot of money.
Right.
You'll miss some tax planning opportunities. You'll miss some opportunities to build some structures into your family. There's just a whole bunch of things that we feel like we'd like the business owner to get ahead of that knowledge instead of finding out, the year that they're trying to get it done, that a number of options are not available to them, and they're not going to exit the way they hope they were.
Right.
Another big point I was thinking about this too is that a lot of business owners don't realize what a saleable business is. They haven't sold a business before,
right.
And they need to understand that if they decide that they're going to sell, especially to a third party,
right.
that the third party is going to look at that business in a much different way than they do or their customers do.
Okay.
And so this book is also intended to help them understand the process of selling a business and to have them understand what makes a business valuable to outside buyers.
Okay, interesting. So, Randy, let's talk a little bit about running the business first. What is the essential principle behind a business owner building, a self-managing company?
Yeah. Probably the most important part about running the self-managing company has to do with building a management team. And while that's part of what we call the value catalyst, and that is knowing what makes your business saleable. It's one of the things that both makes it more valuable and also allows the business owner to work on the business instead of in the business on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment kind of time frame.
Right.
So the business owner has to understand that if he can build a management team that doesn't need him, the business will be worth more money, and he'll also be able to grow a business and start working strategically instead of just on a day-to-day business. And that is really the number one thing that both makes a business probably worth more money and also makes the business owner have the ability to grow a business that is both saleable and also potentially able to be kept within his family if he chooses to do that.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned business being kept in the family, because these business owners, they usually got families, they've usually got kids. So I was just wondering, how important are the kids where having a self-managing company is concerned? I'm thinking about guys like maybe Donald Trump. His kids are handling various parts of the business, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. He's raised his kids, and I have 5 children, and my children, one is the oldest one is having children right now and is a female, and the youngest one is still in school. But the 3 middle ones are all either they work for me or they're working in the business because they were raised in the culture of my family. And that's one of the big benefits that a business owner does have. He has the opportunity generally to raise his kids in such a way that they can learn from the family about the business and from the business really about the family. And so they get opportunities that business owners, that people that don't have businesses, their kids won't have the same kind of opportunities that a business owner can potentially provide for his kids. So that's one of the big benefits to it, frankly. And the concept of transitioning the business either to the kids so that they can run, or building the business in such a way that the family can still own it, whether the kids work in it or not. Both of those things are viable. Matter of fact, not long ago, we started down the road of with one of our clients of taking the business to sale. We'd worked with them for a few years, and frankly, they were ready to go to sale. And and have a self-managing company, and things were going quite well. But after having, I'm guessing we were 3 months into that process, and after going back and talking to the business owner again about the pros and cons of keeping the business, and also having the burden of redeploying the capital once you sell.
Right.
Business owners, a lot of them are suited to run a business, but they have no real experience in running, a large portfolio. That's a different skill set.
Okay.
And so I actually talked the business owner out of selling the business. He has kids, and we had already transitioned some of the ownership to the kids. And 2 of the kids worked in the business. So, we like business owners to keep the businesses if possible, although I will have to say that the percentages, I think it's about 24% of business owners will transition to their kids. About 39, it's 1%, I think it is roughly, that are sold to employees, and the rest of it are sold to third party. So you have to third parties is the rest of it. So the kids is actually the least likely transition for an owner, even though owners don't think of it that way.
Okay, so that's an interesting statistic right there. I mean, usually one would think if a family-run company, one would imagine the kids would inherit the business, but I guess not the case really.
Yeah, they do. I tell you, and it does matter, I think, more also on the type of business it is. So in the agricultural world, of which we've done lots and lots of planning there, the percentages really are different for the agricultural. I think farmers tend to have more kids stay in and are more likely to leave it or transition to one of their children than some of the other businesses are.
All right. Interesting. Okay, got that. Definitely. So, Randy, I've heard stories about, how family businesses, they weren't transitioned properly. They just collapse when their owner dies, or, the owner just has to keep working until he dies just to manage the business. How often does this sort of thing take place?
Yeah, it's pretty sad, honestly. Sometimes the businesses are extremely profitable. I had a guy call us a couple of weeks ago, and just wanted to talk, and I don't know why he didn't call us before, but he had decided he was going to close his business down. He had a fairly large electrical contracting business. None of his kids were interested, so he just shut the business down. And so but I asked him, well, how much were you making in the business? Well, he was taking home $750,000 a year.
Wow.
That's a saleable business.
Right.
But he just decided he didn't have any kids, and he didn't really want to deal with it because he didn't know how.
Right.
So you have good businesses that are shut down, and sometimes you have like you were talking about, where the business is really more of a job than it is a true business. So the owner is very, very involved in the business, and the business can't run without him.
Right. And
those businesses can be saleable. They're just hard to get multiples for them. So, for instance, if it's a dentist, let's say, a one-man business, nobody else other than the dentist and his support people work in it.
Right.
When he's ready to retire, he can sell the business, but he's not going to get 6 or 7 times earnings or something like that. He's going to sell it for 1 times revenue or something. And so it isn't that it's not saleable, it's just that you don't typically get any kind of leverage out of those kinds of service businesses if there's only one, if only the owner is really the primary earner.
I see. Okay, I got it. So what sort of businesses, as you mentioned, are more of a job rather than the businesses? I mean, you mentioned dentists, right? Do professionals like doctors likewise fall in this category?
Yeah, sometimes they do. There are individual practitioners, doctors, lawyers, dentists, this sort of professional side of things where they're running their own business, and they've either got to bring in somebody to train them over time to take over, and then you get a slow buyout that way, which actually does work. It's quite successful. It's one of the better ways to get it done. And also you have part of the reason why you do that, of course, is because you transfer the loyalty from the owner to the buyer, because he's been working with the company or she's been working with the company for 2 or 3 years before the retirement occurs. And that way there's a loyalty transfer that goes along with that, because if he just left and somebody else took over the next day, you'd have a large percentage of those people would find other dentists or doctors or lawyers.
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let's get a little bit into what you do. I mean, you mentioned that you're an exit planner. What is an exit planner, and what exactly does an exit planner do?
Yeah, so the exit planner helps business owners prepare for a successful exit from their business.
Okay.
And the way that we do that is through what we call, our exit planning process is called the Braveheart planning process. And we have 7 steps, as we mentioned, towards that, and those steps walk you through getting an exit which is successful. And the beginning of that process, and I'll just start with just the pieces here of this, the first part is what we call the decision, or the decisions, and that is there's 3 primary questions that have to be answered. That is, who do you want to transition your business to? When do you want to transition the business? And how much do you need from that transition in order to be financially successful the rest of your life? So whatever your financial needs are. So that's sort of the beginning of that whole process. And then, so understanding then the direction is what we get from the decision. Then we look at the resources part of this thing, which is looking at the owner's personal net worth and finding out what he or she has, apart from the value of the business.
Right.
And then we look at the business, and we have a market appraisal done, a market value appraisal done on the business. That, and then we also like to check and see, from a tax perspective, what are we going to have left over after the sale? So not just what the gross sale is, but what's going to be actually coming to the seller. And then from there, that helps us determine if there's a gap. If there is no gap and the owner wants to get out soon, then he has the ability, he or she can sell, we can start the sales process now. But if there's a gap, and there typically is, then we need to turn to building a team and building in and investing in the value catalyst side of things. So, and that is, how do we make the business worth more money within the time frame of which the owner wants to transition out? And that's where you get operational work that has to occur. Excuse me.
All right.
So,
sure, no problem.
That value catalyst thing, it's kind of a big deal for most of them, because, as we mentioned before, one of the first ones is building a management team, and I'll call it the next level management team, because if you've got to move the company to a place where it's worth more money so you can sell it for more, then your current management team may be fine, but you may also need to upgrade it or bring in some people that have experience in growing businesses past the point where you need to grow yours. So you're working with a top level management team. And then another thing that we are working on the value catalyst side is to try to grow consistent and increasing revenue streams, because buyers want to look at your history of earnings, and then they want to know if they're continuing to grow on a year-over-year basis, and they pay for that growth.
Right.
And then, of course, they want to see what your plans are to increase your revenues, and they want to see that you have realistic plans, and that you're not trying to sell them pie in the sky numbers because you have nothing before that to show that you can continue to grow. So so there's these things build upon each other, so that once you start them, you've got to have some time. And that's why we typically say we like to see business owners give us 5 to 7 years before they want to get out. Okay. Now, I've honestly done them within a year, but but for those that we accomplished within a year or so, they were ready. They had already spent money in getting their business to the place where it was saleable. Right. They had a top-notch law firm and accounting firm that was helping keep them up to date on things. So, right. But most people, though, we find that they do need, because there's a gap there, right. And we find lots and lots of issues along the way. So, it's a process, and you need to get in and get busy working through the pieces of it.
Okay, very interesting. So definitely, it's not something like, I mean, granted, there's accounting that's involved, there's law that's involved, but it's definitely not something that just any accountant or any lawyer would be able to handle.
No. We talk about what we call the 1% solution, and that idea is that if you were a business owner and you had a pension plan, you would pay a money manager or an investment counselor of some sort about 1% to manage that couple $1 million or whatever.
Right.
But in the business owner, typically his net worth is typically made up 70 to 90% of his net worth is usually made up in the net worth of his business, not all the other assets.
Okay.
And so we encourage them to be willing to spend that 1 to 2% a year on the business, growing the business, and that includes consulting with mergers and acquisition companies, with top-notch law firms and accounting firms, exit planners and such, so that you're building the momentum towards getting ready for a sale. And you just don't get away with that for nothing. I mean, you get what you pay for, unfortunately, in this side of things. But you're right, with regard to, we want to build a top-notch team, people that are competent in the areas of what we're looking for in order to grow and to build and to transition a company out. And those skill sets aren't typically found in average law firms.
Right. Good point. So, So just exactly, Randy, what does a successful exit plan look like? I mean, everything's done properly. What does this final product, the exit plan, what does it look like?
Well, a successful exit for us and for any business owner is one in which their own objectives are met. So a successful exit for a guy that needs $3 million because he's got all the rest of his life under control. He's got a standard of living where he's very comfortable. He's ready to get out, and he nets the $3 million that he's after, and that's a successful exit for him. I have other quote unquote successful exits that have been almost 200 million. And so you have this range of, they have to do with individuals and individual goals and desires, and everybody's different. And so meeting the objectives and desires of the business owner within the time frame in which they hope to achieve it, that is a successful exit. Also assuming that the dollars and the way in which it's carried out doesn't create problems in the family.
Right.
And so we as we talked about, we try to balance both the financial and the family issues as we go through that planning. One thing I wanted to mention too, which we haven't talked about quite yet, is the idea of building in durability into the business. Okay. If we have a family that comes to us and wants us to help them with an exit planning work, and they say, we 7 years out, and there's, in this situation, let's say there's two brothers and they're partners in the company and they're 50-50 owners, and things have gone well for them. But what I don't know is how long everybody's going to live. Are they going to be healthy for the next 7 years? Are they going to live for the next 7 years?
Right.
And so one of the early things that we do in the business durability side, we go back and we do contingency planning with the business owners to minimize or eliminate all kinds of risks, both to the business and also to the families.
Right.
So as an example here, there's a engineering company that we did business with, we started to do business with anyway, and before we got the plan started, basically the owner died.
Oh, okay.
And
that's
yes.
Okay.
And he was quite young, so in his I think mid-40s, and he was the only person in the engineering firm that had an engineer's license.
Okay.
So even though he had like 27 employees and worked in a couple of states, had a
Right.
very successful business, once he died and he had nothing in place, so nobody else had a license, and there was no planning documents in place to hold the employees. So when he died, the employees all ran because they were certain the business couldn't survive. They all
Hmm.
ran, and that made sure it didn't survive, so that
Ouch.
the surviving spouse, ended up with just life insurance and no value from the business other than liquidation of assets. So that was a major, major loss to the family.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons why when we take a case on, we work early to get the contingency work done to build business durability in there, because I don't know for certain that anybody will live until the end of their time period. Take Prince as an example. Prince
Yeah.
dies at
Yeah.
57,
True.
prime of life, still making a fortune, worth a huge fortune, and has done zero planning of any kind, and
Right.
he's left a mess. He's left a mess behind.
Right.
It'll be years, and the IRS is the major benefactor of that plan. Since there's no planning, I'm sure the IRS is going to net 150 million bucks out of that guy's estate.
Wow. That's quite a bundle of money right there.
That's quite a bundle of money. Yeah.
Yeah. That's quite big.
So there's no promise of tomorrow. That's why we need to do what we're supposed to do every day,
Good point.
and to the extent possible, we protect our businesses and our employees and our families.
Right. All right. Cool. Cool. Definitely some good points there. Okay,
Yeah,
Randy. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and this isn't like hypothetical stuff to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've dealt
Yeah.
with so many families, hundreds of businesses now, and one of the reasons that I got a passion for this thing real early, um, close family member of my own, I was able to. This was more than 20 years ago now, but I
Mm.
was able to get some of the contingency work done on planning and exit planning done. I got some things done in the business that he was part of, and the family. Shortly after that,
Hmm.
he had a heart attack and died.
Ouch.
And
Okay.
so my family members have lived more than 20 years out of that plan that I created a few months before his death.
Hmm.
And the business transitioned, to the other business owners the way it was supposed to. Everything was very smooth. And yet I've also been on the other side where families have come to me to try to save things for them when
Hmm.
there's no planning, and those are completely different outcomes.
Right. Right.
And it's just really nice to know that you've done what you're supposed to do, and that if tragedy strikes, your family and your employees are going to be taken care of.
Hmm. Good point. Good point. Okay,
Hmm.
so Randy, let's say you meet up with someone who's either recently started a business or a business is growing, and he is thinking of retiring from it someday,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason you have only enough time to tell him or her one thing, the most important thing about planning for his exit. What is that one thing that you would tell that person?
um, I would tell them to run the business as though you want to exit at any time. So always be ready for your exit.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Definitely right. Okay, so Randy,
Always.
all right. So Randy, is there anything else, like other stories or topics that you may want to explore as an author in the future? Maybe a follow-up book to this or an expansion on this?
It's interesting that you said that. I probably won't give you an answer to that, but
Okay,
I've
okay.
started writing down some notes. I started writing down some notes about various things that I might want to include in my next book. So
Okay, okay.
because I'm still at the launch stage of this one, but
Uh,
I have already turned to start thinking towards that, but I'm not
cool,
quite ready to
cool.
say what it would be.
Okay. Well, whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. All right.
I hope so.
Yeah, definitely. So, Randy, in the last minute or so of this interview, are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share to inspire listeners? Maybe they're not business owners, maybe they're not thinking of exit plan, but maybe there's something you might be able to share with them regarding this.
Yeah, I would highlight the idea of the brevity of life sometimes, that
Mm,
we don't like to think about the fact that one day we're going to die, or we may
right,
be injured or whatever,
right.
but it is nice, having done hundreds of these plans, seeing seeing the families relief after they finish all their planning, to know that they can go about life and grow with, they have peace that they've done what they know they should do for their families, uh, and to see those things, and those things work really well when tragedy does strike.
Hmm.
So I would encourage people to think about both living their legacy now,
Hmm.
live well, invest in your family and your business, but also spend some time to make sure that you are taking care of your loved ones and the people at your work who depend on you for running this business. So it's a big responsibility, I think, to be a business owner, but it
Right.
also provides us freedom. But with that freedom, I think, comes responsibility.
Right. Okay, got that. Cool. So, in closing, the book is The Braveheart Exit: 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. The authors are guest Randy Long, and you can check out this book at his website randymlong.com. That's randymlong all run together.com. So, Randy, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being an author story. I must say, it's a very interesting session for me, and I'm sure it gave our listeners some clarity in taking care of our family and our business legacy.
Yeah, I love the time with you, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And of course, for those of you listening, if you want more, of course, always feel free to read Randy's book. And if you'd like to follow our author interviews on YouTube, just click the subscribe button. If you'd like, go ahead and buy the book right now. So that's all, folks. So long for now, everyone. And I'll be back on Author Story with another inspiring author.